I want to create a world in which my son is proud of what we do, in a world and a job that actually does impact people's lives for the better.
What happens if the person who witnessed their mother's most agonizing years finally holds enough power to change everything? Not with a speech, not with a public confrontation, and not with sensational statements in the press, but with just a signature, an annual financial report, and a name suddenly disappears. Shortly after becoming the legal owner of the Duchy of Cornwall, Prince William reportedly made his first decision that drew particular attention from many in the royal circles. No press conference, no explanation, no official announcement. But when the new financial records were released, Annabel Elliot, the sister of Queen Camilla, who had been associated with the duchy for almost 2 decades, was no longer on the staff list. To the general public, it might just be a minor change in a document that few people pay attention to. But for those who understand the workings of the British royal family, it's seen as a signal that the balance of power is beginning to shift. Is this just a normal administrative decision? Or is it the first step of a son who has silently observed for years and now finally has the right to make his own choices? In today's video, we'll trace every detail from the moment Queen Elizabeth II died the transfer of power within the royal family to the changes that are said to have shaken the relationship between Prince William and Queen Camilla. If you enjoy cinematic analyses of the royal family, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to join us for more fascinating stories. And to understand why the disappearance of a name from the payroll is seen as the beginning of a major change, we need to go back almost 20 years to when it all really began. From that very moment, the story was no longer just a minor internal change within the royal family. It began on a day that all of Britain will never forget, September 8th, 2022. That was the day Queen Elizabeth II died at Balmoral Castle, ending a reign that lasted more than 7 decades. But in the British royal family, the death of a monarch is not just a personal loss. It is the moment when the entire system of power immediately shifts. In that instant, Charles became King Charles III, and at the same time, Prince William not only became the heir to the throne, he also automatically became the Duke of Cornwall. This is a crucial detail, because the Duchy of Cornwall is not just a beautiful title to display at ceremonies. It is one of the oldest and most powerful private assets associated with the British royal family. This duchy was established in 1337 by King Edward III for his son Edward the Black Prince, the first Duke of Cornwall. Since then, the Duchy of Cornwall has always been designed to give the heir to the throne a separate source of resources. In other words, it helps the successor not be entirely dependent on the reigning monarch. And when Charles ascended the throne, the entire control of the duchy immediately transferred to William. This meant William received not just another title. He received control over a vast system of assets, including land real estate investments, resorts, rental properties, farms, and numerous historical properties spread throughout England and Wales. For decades prior, this very duchy had been a crucial source of funding for Charles when he was Prince of Wales. It sustained his lifestyle projects, personnel, and the relationships he cultivated. But since September 8th, 2022, everything changed hands. For the first time, William had a completely independent financial and power base. He was no longer just a son standing behind his father. He was no longer just an heir waiting his turn. He now had the tools to make his own decisions. And from this point on, those who were once considered safe during Charles's time began to face a new reality. William's era had quietly begun. To understand why William is said to have made more than just a simple managerial decision, let's go back to the name that never truly disappeared from the upheavals of the British royal family, Princess Diana. Before financial reports, before William held the Duchy of Cornwall, before a name was removed from the payroll, there was a marriage watched by the whole world. That was the marriage between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. On the surface, they were a fairy tale of the British royal family. A young prince and princess, a wedding witnessed by millions. But behind the formal photographs and public appearances, the story took on a different color. Camilla appeared as a shadow that never left that marriage. According to this story, Camilla's presence not only hurt Diana as a wife, but also caused her to gradually lose her sense of self. A woman once hailed by the world as a beauty icon began to doubt whether she was still beautiful enough, loved enough, or chosen enough. Diana was described as someone living in a palace but still lonely. She had the title, the spotlight, the public's admiration. But in her private life, she felt left behind in her own marriage. And the most heartbreaking thing is that William and Harry were not immune to this story. They grew up in a tense atmosphere where their mother's sadness wasn't always expressed, but was always present in the silences. They witnessed a mother trying to maintain a public image while inwardly suffering day by day. For William, Diana was more than just a beloved icon. She was his mother, the woman he had seen suffer, the woman he couldn't protect as a young boy. So as William grew and gradually moved closer to power, what happened to Diana was never just the past. It was a memory. It was a wound. It was the reason why all his subsequent actions were viewed through a deeper lens, not just the responsibility of an heir, but also the prolonged silence of a son. And those memories, even after so many years, never truly disappeared. Because those memories never truly faded, 2005 became a particularly sensitive milestone. It wasn't just the year Prince Charles married again. It was also the time when Diana's old wounds were brought back into the public eye. Before Charles officially married Camilla in April 2005, William and Harry reportedly had a private conversation with their father. They didn't object to him continuing his relationship with Camilla. They didn't try to prevent him from having a private life, but they made a very clear plea: please don't marry. For Diana's two sons, a wedding wasn't just Charles's private matter. It would bring up the failed marriage between Charles and Diana again in every newspaper. It would force the public to compare Diana to Camilla. And more importantly, it would make the woman who had once stood in the shadows of that marriage an official part of the royal family. But ultimately, Charles chose to marry her. From that moment on, Camilla was no longer a name outside the palace. She entered the royal family as the legal wife of the man who would later become king. And to appease public reaction, a message was released: when Charles ascended the throne, Camilla would not be called queen. She would bear the title Princess Consort. For many, it was a compromise. For William, it might have been a final boundary, a promise to prevent Diana's past from being completely erased. Camilla could stand beside Charles, but she would not usurp the symbolic position once held by William's deceased mother. However, as time passed, that boundary began to shift. By February 2022, Queen Elizabeth II expressed her wish that Camilla be called Queen Consort when Charles became king. To the public, this might be seen as a final approval from the Queen. But internally, it carried a heavier weight, another step in Camilla's journey closer to the title she was initially thought to have. Then, in 2023, after Charles's coronation, the word consort gradually disappeared from public usage. Camilla was no longer primarily referred to as Queen Consort. She became Queen. And that's what made things more complicated than a title debate. Because William had witnessed each promise being adjusted, each boundary being widened. Step by step, what was once considered impossible became a reality. The woman Diana had suffered for the woman William and Harry had wished their father wouldn't marry finally stood at the highest position alongside the king. William didn't react publicly. He didn't create a crisis. He didn't say anything shocking to the media. He just observed. And as the years passed, that silence didn't mean forgetting. It was like a long pause before the once powerless man finally had the power to rewrite his own boundaries. And when that silence lasted long enough, it no longer resembled endurance. It began to resemble waiting. Because when William finally took control of the Duchy of Cornwall, one of the first names to be noticed wasn't a politician, a senior advisor, or a media personality. It was Annabel Elliot. Annabel Elliot was the sister of Queen Camilla. She wasn't a frequent face-to-face photographer. She wasn't someone who always appeared at major royal events. But for nearly 20 years, she held a very special place. Within the Duchy of Cornwall, a body of assets that had previously belonged to Charles before passing to William. Annabel's role was interior design. She was tasked with decorating, renovating, and beautifying many of the duchy's properties. Holiday homes, historic estates, and spaces used for commercial or representative purposes all bore the mark of her work. On paper, it might seem like a normal professional contract, but in the context of this story, it carries a far more sensitive meaning. Annabel is not just an interior designer. She is the sister of Camilla, the woman who became the center of so much of Diana, William, and Harry's past trauma. Throughout Charles's time controlling the duchy, Annabel's position remained largely untouched. She continued working, continued taking on assignments, continued being connected to the system of assets Charles had built around himself. But when William became Duke of Cornwall, things began to change. There was no public confrontation, no noisy dismissal announcement, no media controversy, no statement from William explaining why this change occurred. There was one strange detail: Annabel Elliot's name was absent from the duchy's annual financial report. To outsiders, it might just be a missing line in a dry financial document. But to those who understand how the royal family operates, silence can sometimes be more powerful than a public statement. A name disappearing can speak louder than a speech, because this wasn't just about a contract ending. It was seen as the first signal that William had no intention of continuing the arrangements from his father's time. Relationships that were secure under Charles's weren't automatically secure under William's. And that was the crucial point. William didn't need to speak to prove that power had changed hands. He simply let the documents speak for themselves. From the moment Annabel disappeared from the payroll, the message became clear: the Duchy of Cornwall was no longer Charles's domain. It was no longer a place where old influences were taken for granted. It had become William's territory, and William began building his own team. The change is no longer confined to the numbers of a financial report. It's beginning to spill over into the most familiar spaces of the royal family meals, traditional holidays, moments in front of the international cameras. Conflict is no longer kept behind palace doors. One of the first signs appeared at Christmas at Sandringham. Sandringham is more than just a royal holiday home. It's where generations of the royal family gather every holiday season. To the public, it's an image of unity, the whole family attending church, waving, smiling, upholding a long-standing tradition. But Sandringham is also where a new boundary is being tested. Camilla reportedly invited her stepson Tom Parker Bowles to Christmas with the royal family. For her, it may have been a very personal act, a mother wanting her son to be with her on holiday. But for William, that appearance held a different meaning. For Sandringham wasn't just Charles's current residence. One day, it would belong to William. And Camilla's inclusion of her own children in one of the most important royal traditions was seen as a sign that she wanted to expand her own family's position within the royal sphere. William reportedly didn't attend the main family lunch. Instead, he stayed at Anmer Hall with Catherine and the children. There were no statements of protest, no attacks, but that absence spoke volumes. In the world of royalty, where every seat, every banquet, every step carries symbolic meaning, William's absence from such a traditional moment couldn't simply be seen as a matter of schedule. It was a chilling message he wouldn't tolerate any further divisions. Then another moment occurred at Windsor. During Donald Trump's state visit, Catherine had a conversation with Melania Trump. It should have been a normal diplomatic scene, two women standing side by side, exchanging a soft exchange, maintaining a dignified image for the cameras. But then Camilla entered the scene. She was described as gesturing with her hand to Catherine, as if asking her to leave. The action was quick, lasting only a few seconds. But these brief moments in the royal family are sometimes enough to create a storm. The clip went viral. Viewers rewinded, slowed down, and analyzed every movement. And body language expert Judy James was cited as suggesting the gesture resembled a power grab, as if Camilla was reminding Catherine, who was in a stronger position at the moment. What made the situation even more sensitive was that Catherine wasn't just William's wife. She was the future queen. One day, the title of queen that Camilla currently holds will pass to Catherine. So that moment was not just an awkward gesture in front of the cameras. It was seen as symbolic of the collision between the present and the future. On one side was Camilla, currently queen, alongside Charles. On the other side was Catherine, who would become queen when William ascended the throne. And behind Catherine was William, who had quietly begun to re-establish order within the duchy, eliminating old influences and building his own circle of power. From Sandringham to Windsor, what had once been private tensions began to surface as public signs. No longer whispers in the corridors. No longer disagreements understood only by insiders. It had become a series of signals visible to the public. Christmas was no longer just Christmas. A wave was no longer just a gesture. An absence is no longer just a family matter. It's all beginning to converge on one message: power within the royal family is shifting. And as power shifts, those who once felt safest may be the first to realize the ground beneath their feet is no longer as firm as it once was. And as the signs of a power transition became increasingly apparent, another event emerged, making the future of the royal family a topic of discussion more than ever before. This was the moment King Charles was diagnosed with cancer. The news of the king's health quickly raised many questions, not just about his official schedule, not just about his ability to perform royal duties, but also about the future of the entire institution after Charles's departure. For a monarch, illness is not simply a health issue. It forces people to think about what will happen next. Who will take over? Who will protect the stability of the royal family? And more importantly, what will happen to those who remain? Among them, the name most frequently mentioned is Camilla. For many years, Camilla stood by Charles's side during royal tour ceremonies and important moments. Although her journey to public acceptance was not easy, she gradually became a familiar part of the image of Charles III's reign. But everyone understood that this position was tied to Charles. If Charles were no longer the head of the royal family, everything around Camilla would change. That's why there are reports that Charles repeatedly expressed his wish for William to treat Camilla kindly in the future. Not as a king ordering his successor, but as a husband concerned for the woman who would be left behind. It's a very human wish, because Charles understood better than anyone that his era would eventually end. When William became king, he would have the full right to make his own decisions. No one could choose for him. No one could ask him to maintain everything that existed under the previous regime. Therefore, many believe that what Charles most desired was not to preserve power for Camilla, but rather to hope that she would still be treated with respect after things changed. But while those expectations were mentioned, William continued on the path he had chosen since taking over as Duchy of Cornwall. There was no sign that the restructuring process had stopped. There was no indication that the previous changes were merely temporary decisions. Step by step, William continued to strengthen his team, reorganize the management structure, and shape a new direction for the assets he controlled. Remarkably, it all unfolded in the same way. There were no lengthy speeches. There were no interviews explaining his views. There were no direct responses to speculation. William remained almost completely silent. But it was precisely that silence that made every decision stand out. In the royal family, words can create headlines, but decisions are what last the longest. An appointment, a contract ends, a name disappears, a new team emerges. These are all clearer signals than any speech. Perhaps that's why many believe William never responded to debates verbally. He responded through governance. He responded through decisions made behind closed doors, where there were no cameras, no applause, and no emotional pronouncements. Because for someone preparing for the throne, power isn't demonstrated through what's said publicly. It's demonstrated through what actually changes. And as each small decision began to piece together into a larger picture, it became clear that the transition was no longer a distant future. It had been quietly unfolding day by day, even while Charles was still in office. And if that transition had been quietly unfolding day by day, the final question was no longer whether William held power. The real question was, when all that power officially changed hands, what would Camilla be left with? One day William would become king, Catherine would become queen, and when that moment arrived, not only would titles within the royal family change, their positions, residences, protections, and levels of influence would also be rearranged. That's when names like Sandringham and Balmoral become particularly important. Sandringham wasn't just a place where the royal family gathered for Christmas. Balmoral wasn't just a castle associated with quiet Scottish summers. These were properties of immense historical, emotional, and powerful significance in royal life. But the crucial point was, Camilla didn't own those places. She could walk through those corridors as queen alongside Charles. She could live in those rooms, receive guests in those spaces, appear in public from those locations. But in essence, those places did not belong to her. They belonged to Charles. And after Charles, they would belong to William. This made Camilla's future far more precarious than it appeared to the public, because her title, status, and residence were all tied to one man, King Charles III. While Charles was still on the throne, Camilla held a central position beside him. But if Charles were gone, the entire order would change. William would be king, Catherine would be queen, and Camilla would no longer be in her current position. The detail that made things even more so was that Ray Mill House, Camilla's former private residence, had been sold. It had once been her only true home. A space independent of the palace, independent of ceremony, independent of the kindness of anyone in the royal family. But with that house gone, Camilla also lost a crucial source of privacy. So, if Charles is gone, the question of where Camilla will live is not just a question of property. It's a question of her place in the new era. Where will she be kept? How will she be treated? Will William choose reconciliation? Or will he continue the path of re-establishing boundaries that he began as the Duchy of Cornwall? The man once considered a major influence alongside Charles, who had entered the heart of the royal family, who had witnessed the boundaries around him shift over time, may now depend on the decision of the man who once stood outside all power as a young boy. As a child, William couldn't protect Diana from the trauma of her marriage. But as an adult, William can decide what continues, what ends, and who will retain their place in the system he inherited. That's why this ending isn't dramatic. There are no slammed doors, no confrontation in front of the media, no angry final words. Only a cold truth power has begun to shift hands. And when power shifts, those who once thought they were safest may be the first to learn to live in a completely new order. If things unfolded this way, would William choose reconciliation with Camilla, or would he continue the changes he had quietly begun? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy analyzing the British royal family from a narrative, hypothetical, and cinematic perspective, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. This video is based on a family story and is for creative reference only. The content should not be considered a reflection of historical events or verified information about members of the British royal family. The details, interpretations, and opinions in the video are for storytelling analysis and discussion purposes only. Viewers are encouraged to synthesize information from multiple sources